Greetings, pilots, and welcome to Fly's Flight Academy. My name is Kavathis, otherwise known as Flyteco on Subtour, and today we're going to be finishing up my beginner GSF guide series with the final thing I will leave you with, learning how to build your loadout. And this is a topic that I honestly don't have too much to talk about, so I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible without rambling on about too much. What I really want to instill with this video is kind of the understanding of learning who you are as a player, because building a loadout in GSF is really hard. The loadout you're looking at right now is the one I currently run. It includes a Star Guard, a Flash Fire, a Spear Point, a Sledgehammer, and a Quarrel. Honestly, this is probably like the 20th revision of the loadout I've had in the last however many years. It's changed significantly each time I've played GSF. Realistically speaking, it even changes midday. If I'm playing and I'm having a bad day, I'll kind of swap my shifts around. But I will always have the same general scheme with my loadouts. Essentially, what I aim to do, and what I believe is kind of commonplace amongst GSF players, I've certainly noticed that a lot of the more advanced players, their loadouts are fairly refined and unchanging. Most of the time, this is due to either they main a certain ship class, something like that. But people like myself who are a bit more universal and kind of play everything and don't really have like a specific preference, well, let me rephrase that. People that aren't necessarily tied down to a specific preference, I prefer very much so my Coral. I very much so am a gunship main. I prefer the Coral, and it's my favorite ship to play. However, I'm not opposed to playing a Strike, a Scout, a Bomber, etc. I will, if I'm playing with the team, I will fill whatever role is necessary, because that's what playing as a team does. And that influences your loadout dramatically. If you're playing with a team or playing solo, the options that you have available to you become sort of shifted in a way to cater to one style or the other. Obviously, playing with a team, like buff ships, like the support variant Clarion, Spear Point, Bombers, most Scout or the Nova Dive, kind of stuff like that. Not necessarily super aggressive, but kind of like hybrid ships become a lot more valuable to teams because they do more with their kits than other ships would. For example, a Star Guard is not as useful as a Clarion in terms of team impact. Obviously, a good Star Guard player is a good Star Guard player and can do well in any scenario, but a good Clarion player can essentially give your team such a wide advantage with target selection and buffs and healing and all these things, while the Star Guard is exclusively tied to damage, as well as the Pike. So, keeping in mind your team, if you're playing with a team, keep in mind all these things. Honestly, the easiest way to make a team loadout is to sit down with your team, and if you guys want to have fun, play whatever you want as if you were playing solo. But if you're aiming to like speed run the weekly or whatever, then you can sit down and pick out a team comp. And honestly, communication is the key there. If your team's aiming to do something special, then by all means do whatever your team do whatever you and your team agree with, and you guys should have fun. If you're playing solo, however, there are a few staples I believe that you should always have. In the particular way that I have this loadout set up, you'll notice that, number one, I have a Spear Point. The Spear Point I always have in every loadout I always run, team comp or not. This is because Spear Point is never not useful. The tensor field ability really is crucial to a lot of domination maps, And due to the 50-50 split of TDM and domination existing in the game pool, or the game mode pool, the chances of me hitting a domination match and being the only tensor in the match are fairly high. So I run it just to have it, just in case. And I've gotten fairly acquainted with my particular spear point loadout. That way I can fight effectively if I end up not dying immediately on my spear point. If I die immediately on the spear point, I tend to swap off of it because I personally believe that other ships have higher carrying capacity, but the spear point is just such a good initial starting ship that I believe that it always should find a place in everyone's loadout. I don't see enough spear points often. Frankly, I don't think people like playing the spear point just because it's like a quick dedication and then you can swap to something you actually want to play. Uh, I personally, I enjoy my spear point. It's actually a lot of fun. The tensor solo tensoring yourself is actually super like interesting and kind of a fun way to chase people or rotate or do other fun GSF things. But I certainly find more enjoyment with other ships. So that's there. I always have a flash fire now. This is because the flash fire is exclusively good against gunships. Well, not necessarily exclusively, but it is the hardest counter to gunships that exists, at least in my opinion, and somewhat statistically. I have seen flash fires be able to deal with gunships more consistently because of their raw damage output. Nova knives are good too, but because of the EMP, you aren't benefiting from the EMP since you're running rocket pods anyways. It's a little bit more hit or miss because you're trading the flash fire just having straight up damage and a steroid to Nova Knife having utility and slightly less damage. That said, a Nova Dive would fit this slot as well. That those two are essentially reserved for this slot in particular. It's just dependent on what I'm seeing most of the day. If I'm seeing a lot of gunships, it's the flash fire. If I'm seeing more bombers and stuff like that, it's the Nova Dive. It's basically just this is my countering slot. This is essentially the if I need to fight a particularly challenging class that requires a specific thing. That's what this is for. The Starguard slot, this is an aggression slot. Not to say that the Flashfire isn't aggressive. But what I mean is, this is the slot that I use for. It's pretty much dedicated to strikes at this point because I play the most aggressively on my strikes because I know their limits. I'm very used to playing on these three ships because they're the ships I started out playing with. Even way back when GSF first came out, I pretty much only played Starguard and Pike just because I felt comfortable with them. Clarion I've picked up a lot recently because it's just a good ship and people seem to hate it because it has remote slicing. I like it because it is remote slicing and I will use it because it's good that way. Unfortunately, I play to what I like to play and not to what people won't complain about. So this is essentially a strike fighter slot, but it's meant for my aggressive pick of the day. So if I'm playing into a lot of bombers and I still want to play the Flashfire, this can actually go. The Flashfire can go in this slot as well, and I'll have the Nova Dive. So in essence, I'll have 3 scouts or a strike, scout, scout, something of that variance. But I'll always for sure have 2 scouts and one other aggressive ship of my choice. This slot over here, this is the comfort pick. This is essentially the ship I am most comfortable with. This always stays here, and it's pretty much always the Coral because I am the most comfortable with the ship. It's not necessarily the smartest comfort choice. In reality, the smarter choice would probably be Starguard, but I have noticed that I have better games on the Coral than I do the Starguard typically, just because of the safety that I've learned to adapt with Coral. But any ship that you're really used to should fill the slot. realistically, this can be whatever. It can be a bomber, strike, scout, gunship, whatever you want to play. It's your personal slot. It's a slot I believe has the most variance in what you believe should be there. And the fourth slot here, this is my for fun slot. This is the if I'm really having a bad day and want to just mess around, I'll pick up the silliest ship in the game, the sledgehammer, and have an absolute time I'll have the absolute time of my life for that day, because everything about the sledgehammer screams, please, I just want to have fun. It's slow, it's beefy, it does absurd amounts of damage for what it has as in its kit. It's got zero sensor dampening, so you know you're going in loud and proud, and you're just really getting in there to fight people. That's sincerely what the slot is for. This is the I've had a bad day, so I want to have some fun slot. And the sledgehammer, in my opinion, provides the most fun. It's just a silly ship that does it still does well, and I'm comfortable enough with it that I can successfully reinstill some joy into that day's grind. Um, there have been myself being in a guild. Our guild has a PvP division, and I was for a while exclusively the GSF person, and there were some days where I would want to just have some silliness and mess around, and the sledgehammer is just the way to do that. Plus, one of my old teammates just really introduced me to the sledgehammer because he did amazingly with it, and that made me question everything I knew about GSF. So I picked it up, and ever since I've had fun with it. And that's really it. There is no overarching philosophy with loadouts. It is a lot of It's honestly a decent bit of personal preference. I do sincerely believe that these two slots do need to be kind of static. Spear point really should just be a staple in people's kits. I don't know why people don't want to run it. Well, I know why people don't want to run it. It's because you're really a speed bot for like the first 2 minutes of a game, and then you die and swap to something you actually want to play. But that's totally fine. You being a good teammate is honestly appreciated. Generally speaking, people will actually thank you for saying you're gonna tensor. GSF community, despite what you might hear, is actually really nice, and we appreciate the people that want to help out the team. And I personally go out of my way to thank every tensor person I ever encounter, because they are the true MVPs of the GSF community. They help us get to places and be super aggressive, and as such, I reciprocate by having spear point and doing the same thing. And this plot, I do believe that there are times in GSF where you really need to have a ship that's good at slaying a particular class, and I know for most people, and it's kind of an unfortunate occurrence that the scouts are really the way to do that. Some people don't like playing scouts just because they're flimsy, and I understand that, but they really are just the best case scenario for you to fight things. The other okay option is a Starguard, but even that's really not as good as a Flashfire when it comes to fighting gunships, because you're a lot slower, and you're realistically not going to be tanking many more shots. I mean, you might get one extra shot's worth of life, and a good gunship is going to make sure that shot doesn't really matter. So I sincerely believe that some aggressive scout should be in that slot. But that's pretty much it for this video. That is it for my beginner series as well. This is the final video for that. like I said, this is probably going to be the last video from me in terms of GSF as a whole. I'm going to be making a website for this. Actually, by the time this video is up, it's probably already up, so the link will be in the description. There's going to be a build guide as well in sort of spreadsheet form to accompany it. The website itself will have all the builds and everything in more of a written form with explanations and stuff like that. But if you want just the hardcore spreadsheet, that will exist too. And that should be it. If you want to hunt me down in game, I am on Satil Shan. This is the server Satil Shan, and this is my user, or this is the main that I play on most frequently. If you encounter me, say hi. Just remember, please always be nice. I will go out of my way to try and be nice to people, and I generally aim to hope that people will attempt to reciprocate, because being kind to people is just a good way of life. So, unsurprisingly, if you're nice to people, they tend to be nice back. So just spread positivity in GSF. We need a little bit more of it in current times. Some people are getting negative because with continuing to date my videos for every single time I seem to do this, the pandemic really has hit, and it kind of changed the way of life for some people, and gaming kind of became a staple. And a lot of the people I know that were in the GSF community kind of saw it as a release. And understandably, if you're the thing that you find fun becomes unfun by either toxicity or the meta just not being particularly what you wanted it for the week or whatever, it understandably will make you upset. And I sincerely apologize. I also wish we weren't experiencing what we are. But overall, I just kind of hope everyone's bearing through it and having the most fun they can have. And I do believe that GSF is a really good outlet and a really fun way to meet people. I have met a lot of cool people in GSF. A lot of them just neat people that are great GSF players and are also friendly. You'll notice a lot of the veterans were pretty chill people. There are very, very few exclusions, and the exclusion people tend to just be salty, or not necessarily salty. They tend to be a little more abrasive because, you know, they A, know they're good, and B, just as I said before, they want to have fun. And anytime the game isn't fun, it tends to feel bad. So it's understandable that some people just handle it differently. But all this to say, I hope you'll have a wonderful time. Like I said, feel free to message me in game. I'm potentially gonna have a Discord chat or a Discord server for this. I don't necessarily know that I want to, but if there is one while this video is up, it will be in the description. So there's that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed and learned something. Anything you guys want me to specifically talk to you about, feel free to either post a comment in one of the videos pertaining to whatever you want to talk about. So if you have like a ship question, feel free to post a comment on the ship video. If you have just a generic question, post it in like my first video or whatever. Honestly, just pick a video, post a comment. I will attempt to get back to you as soon as possible and kind of help you understand something that I couldn't quite explain in here. As I originally stated, this was a series for beginners, so I kind of kept my thoughts about certain things out of this. I did go on certain rants every now and then, but for the most part, I tried to keep myself pointed and concise, and hopefully I achieved that. I'm honestly not too sure. I personally feel very proud of this series, so hopefully you guys actually did enjoy it. And that's all for this. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will hopefully see many more of you out in the skies. And hopefully you guys are trying out something new, and hopefully you're trying to learn something crazy or fly a weird ship, or just embracing the sledgehammer as your Lord and Savior ship that it truly is, because it just is the best ship in the game. I promise. But hope you all have a wonderful day, and see you later. Bye bye.